Unity game developers everywhere are furious about a new decision that will impact every single game ever made with the engine. Unity is, beginning in 2024, charging up to 20 cents per install for games made with Unity. And as a game developer who has been using Unity for over 3 years now, let me just say, this is bad. Don't get me wrong, I love Unity and its pricing structure has been incredibly generous up to now, so I understand that they need to make some more money. But in this video, I'm going to go through all the details of this huge change and why I think that it will be a huge mistake for Unity to continue with this implementation of the Unity Runtime Fee. If anybody from Unity is watching this, then hi. I'm going to be pretty critical in this video, but I'm doing this in order to voice my concerns with this new decision, and I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who wants Unity to continue to succeed and stay a great tool for game developers everywhere. But I think that these suggested changes are antithetical to that wish. As I mentioned, I'm a Unity game developer. I work on my game, Project Seaborn, almost every day using Unity, and I even released a commercial game on Steam that used Unity. I really like Unity. It's flexible, extendable, and they have been constantly improving it. Although Unity has been getting a lot of flack through the last year or so for some of its decisions and statements, up to now I've been staying silent about these statements, because I could at least see where Unity was coming from. I think they have actually been making great strides forward in the past few years, with the release of netcode for game objects, a high-quality first-party system for online multiplayer, acquisitions like Classic SCM, which they've turned into a great source control tool made for Unity specifically, and also just solid additions to the editor like UI Toolkit. But if the changes suggested with the Unity Runtime Fee are implemented exactly as they are suggested right now, I will honestly be considering abandoning Unity and moving my one-year game projects over to Godot, which is a free and open source engine. So what are those changes exactly? Well, let's get straight to the source. On the official Unity website, there's a page dedicated to introducing the Unity Runtime Fee. Now, the Unity Runtime is code that Unity uses to run Unity games, and now every time the user installs a project that uses this runtime, whoever distributed that project will have to pay the Unity Runtime Fee, but only certain games are required to pay these fees. And so there are two criteria listed that must both be met before the fee starts to apply. The first criteria is how much revenue that the game has made so far, and the second is how many people have installed your game. Here's the catch: Unity personal users, who are the vast majority of its users, including myself, have a revenue threshold of $200,000 in the last 12 months, and an install threshold of 200,000 installs total. But Unity Pro and Enterprise users have a revenue threshold of $1 million and 1 million installs before they start having to pay. And the other thing, which is even bigger, is how much that fee costs, which also varies massively. Unity personal users pay 20 cents per install, while Unity Pro and Enterprise users pay from 15 cents all the way down to 1 or 2 cents per install, determined by how many installs they have in the month that they release it, with more installs per month equating a lower price per install. There are a few details that I will cover here before I get into my thoughts about it. First off, users in emerging markets will pay much lower rates per install, and emerging markets just means countries that are in this list of countries. Also, it does state that these discounts apply if end users are located in emerging markets. How are they determining this location? Extracting location data in order to charge a fee to the developer seems a bit like a violation of privacy, honestly. Unity also states that it may waive these fees if they feel like it, and that they may provide discounted offers to developers who use other Unity tools like their ads. So why is this bad? Well, let's just start with a simple example from everybody's favorite ethereal game developer, Danny. He shared this post, stating that this is how much he would have paid if these two games were released before Unity and stated the runtime fee. Now, his numbers are kinda wrong. For one, Muck has no monetization, so he actually wouldn't have had to pay anything for it. And as for Crab Game, there is a marketplace in the game that Danny made some money off of, although the first 200,000 installs aren't counted, and Crab Game didn't always have the marketplace, so only installs after it were added would count. But that's still a lot of money, millions of dollars, likely more than what he would have paid if he had just had to pay a percentage of his revenue. So I think it highlights one of the core flaws in the system. Crab Game is a free-to-play game with in-app purchases. This install fee doesn't take this into account. Games like Danny will be hit the hardest by a per-user system like this because freemium games, as they're often called, have very high installs but very low median revenue per user. Now, I personally don't really like freemium games, but according to Roundhill Investments, freemium games make up 85% of all video game revenue, which is only increasing. Unity has been a very good choice for developers of freemium games due to the engine's good performance of mobile devices, ad services, and a variety of other reasons, and so has been used by so many huge ones, including games like Genshin Impact. But now, using Unity to develop a freemium game is kind of just a bad idea, and this pushes these would-be developers to Unity's competitors. There is sort of the solution here implemented by Unity, with the fee rates of pro users decreasing the more installs there are each month. And while this does help it out, it also means that periods where install rates drop will result to even worse hits to profit than they usually will, with revenue going down but fees decreasing by a lower amount. And the other result from this will be yet another incentive for freemium developers to kick out free-to-play players. The vast majority of their money comes from whales, alongside users who are willing to spend a decent amount of money on the game. And free-to-play players are actually a loss for these developers, as they have to pay for the server cost of hosting these players who they make no money off of. And the Unity revenue fee just adds another cost onto these players, which will likely encourage these developers to make their games more hostile to free-to-play players. And finally, I have to comment on free-to-play games that make the majority of their money off of ads. These are usually casual mobile games, and most of them suck. However, before now, a decent portion of Unity's revenue came from running the ad service that these games use. While other free-to-play games' average user spending is bounced out by whales, with these casual games, average user spending will always be rock bottom, and games like these rely on gathering huge install bases to make any money. You can easily see how that will conflict with Unity's new system. The next issue is a bit smaller, but it really bugs me. Unity has different rates for personal and pro users. Before now, Unity Pro was required for games that made enough money, as a flat fee subscription service. Now, however, Unity Pro is no longer required for games that make enough revenue. But Unity Pro users can get much cheaper fee pricing. Now, for a game to even qualify to pay fees, the game has to be pretty successful, so it makes sense to expect them to pay for the professional version of Unity. What I don't get is why this is no longer being automatically enforced, and you can instead proceed with Unity Personal and end up paying way more money in fees, while also not getting any of the benefits of Unity Pros. And just honestly, why would anybody do this? I don't think this option makes any sense, and it honestly seems a little bit predatory. Like, I can easily imagine an older game that was made by a developer who no longer gets enough installs to need the pro version suddenly has a huge influx of new players and is hit by a much higher build due to the much higher rate of Unity Personal. I doubt this is Unity's intention with the system, but it really is the only case I can imagine where it would ever come into play, so I'm really questioning its design. And this brings up the much bigger issue, legacy games. What about all of the games that were made before now with Unity? They made and released all these games way before this fee was announced, but they could qualify for it. And this really seems like it's pushing it legally as well, as these developers never expected to have to pay a fee whenever they started with Unity, and retroactively adding it is pretty scummy. At the time that I'm recording this voiceover, it's only been about a day since the announcement, but I've already seen dozens of big developers posting about how they feel this system is sort of a betrayal from Unity, and I can't help but agree. I don't really know anything about the law, but this does remind me of the controversy earlier this year with Wizards of the Coast, where they also tried to monetize third-party content, after decades of allowing this content for free. However, what's probably the biggest issue with Unity runtime fees is such a serious and obvious issue that I'm really hoping that Unity anticipated this issue, because it would be insane if they really haven't considered this. That issue is, according to Stefan Totlio, I think I'm saying the name right, who is a major game developer who got into contact with Unity, reinstalls also charge a fee. This could obviously lead to players install bombing games, making this old 4chan post reality. Unity then went on to clarify that they will be using the fraud detection solutions that they have for their ads system as a starting point, and this copy and pasted reply that they reply to everybody who pointed out the obvious flaws in the system with. Now, it seems a bit weird to only have a starting point in mind for stopping such serious abuse whenever announcing a brand new monetization system. But then, while I was in the process of writing this script, Unity actually backpedaled on the claim that reinstalls would charge developers again. Again, responding to Stefan Totlio, now only the initial installations would trigger a fee, and demos for games mostly won't trigger fees. Also, for a service like Xbox Game Pass, Xbox themselves would be charged with any install fees instead of the developers. And all of this conflicting information highlights an issue with Unity's handling of this announcement, or rather lack thereof. Unity didn't seem to initially anticipate issues like install bombing, and they really did not publicly communicate a lot of information as well, with people having to rely on Unity insiders in order to hear secondhand of the details of their policies, as well as announcements of any changes. Unity really needs to come out and address this as soon as possible. It's bad that they launched a huge change in business strategy like this to begin with, and even worse, they didn't have a complete plan for what to do to address all the issues with the system, so it's practically the bare minimum to expect them to address this controversy publicly. In terms of game engines, this monetization strategy takes Unity from one of the most generous prices to one of the most expensive, and this instantly removed one of its core advantages over engines like Unreal. But the open source engine Godot is just as big of a problem, as this huge earth-shattering change makes it clear the inherent danger that comes from using a tool controlled by a corporation like Unity. If Unity is willing to do this, then what else are they willing to do to make more money? For developers who want a stable and totally free solution, Godot is only looking more attractive by the minute. Godot will stay in active development, but at any time, you can just go back to any old version of Godot or even fork your own, so you don't have to worry about the Godot team suddenly charging install fees. There are a few other issues that I believe deserve to be brought up. First off, it's possible that the Unity runtime fee would apply to pirated copies of a game, charging a developer for copies they didn't even sell. And this also applies to installs of a game that didn't get refunded. Also, just how are they tracking these downloads and installations? It seems like Unity will be directly taking this data from users, which raises concerns over privacy. This also impacts cheaper games more because they'll still have to pay the same rate as games that cost more, which will affect their profitability disproportionately. And now they're also making it so the Unity Personal stops working after being disconnected from the internet for 3 days. And they also got rid of Unity Plus, which makes it significantly more expensive for developers to pay to remove the splash screen from the beginning of their Unity game, which just seems like an odd choice. So what do I think needs to be done? Well, I don't have insider information of what Unity is facing as a company right now, but I'm sure that they need to start increasing their revenue, as their main sources of revenue from the ads and the asset store just aren't bringing in enough money for them right now. So don't get me wrong, I understand that Unity wants to monetize its absolutely massive user base of developers and install base across players, but this is just not the way to do it. So if you really do have to stick with this runtime fee, then I suggest removing the fee for personal and instead automatically charging the upgraded pro whenever a game hits a large enough install base. I also suggest the installs across multiple devices of the same game for one user, like one on Steam Deck and one on PC, should only count as one if possible. But this really does not solve the issue of games that have a lower price point, or freemium games that make a very low average revenue per user. So I think there is a much better system that would solve these problems much more smoothly and is kinda staring us right in the face. Just do revenue share. It's what Unreal Engine uses. After a game makes over $1 million, Epic Games starts to take a 5% royalty from future sales, and this solves literally every issue with the install fee model. Now games that make less per user are charged proportionately less, and there's no way to break the system through install bombing. While it would ideally only apply to future games, even if they applied it to legacy games, it will never cost more than the developer is making from the game, and it's also just much easier to understand. And since it's also only applied to games that make over $1 million, it doesn't impact new or small developers, which seemed to be one of the things that Unity was shooting for. It's really simple, Unity, just please do this instead. And also, please remove the requirement for Unity Personal to be always aligned. What does forcing this even do for Unity? As for myself, I'm conflicted. I'm gonna wait to pass final judgment until Unity comes out with more statements. Hopefully they'll implement the revenue share system instead, or at least patch up some of the problems with the fee system. I don't know if this will be enough for me to switch engines, but it does make me uneasy with the future of the engine, so I don't know if I want to stake the future of my current project on it. Once again, if anybody from Unity is watching this, then please prove me wrong. I don't want this game engine to give up everything that it has for this. Okay, thanks for watching. Check out this video if you want to see the first 100 days of development for my indie RPG project Seaborn, and the 200 days video is getting somewhat close, so subscribe for that too. Bye.